Well, thanks all for being here today at the GovLab's Global Online Conference on Crowd Law. So for those of you who don't know so much about us, we are an action research center based in New York City at NYU, and our mission is to improve people's lives by changing the way we govern. We have a great group of crowd law practitioners here today, and we're going to engage in a discussion on what is happening around the world in terms of crowdsourcing of regulation, legislation, and constitutions. So my name is Maria Hermosilla, and I will moderate this event on behalf of the GovLab. With me is Beth Novick, which is our founder and director, and she will be discussing with you during the roundtables and delivering the closing remarks. There's other GovLabbers I do want to introduce. Julia Root, she will be gathering your questions through Twitter. If she can, well, there's a lot of people, so maybe you won't really find her, but if you need to find her on the chat, Julia Root will be gathering your questions through Twitter. And Irene, she's waving there. She's going to be in the chat also with Denora, gathering your questions through the chat. So what's the context here? Well, last year, we met twice, actually, mid last year. Some of you were there in smaller events where we were discussing what was happening in terms of crowd law. And now, a year later, there's much more experiments underway, several that have ended and or are celebrating their first or second year anniversaries. So we really wanted to bring together a bigger group to review the progress in the field. And the goal of this session is to deepen our collective understanding of what's happening, what works, what doesn't. As GovLab, we're a research center, so we're really interested in learning, and we want to learn with you and reflect with you. And of course, this is a peer-to-peer learning session, so it would be a conversation that's moderated between you. And we're going to start with lightning presentations from practitioners. Then we're going to have 3 roundtables, one about outreach and engagement strategies, one about designing to overcome barriers, and one about measuring impact. So we want to help this field progress. You know, we think that this is a way to change the way we govern and improve people's lives. So we're happy to have you here. And we encourage you to please tweet with the hashtag crowdlaw. So we can then have a recollection of this event on Twitter. And I'll just go through the logistics. So this is a big event online, but we're happy to be able to do it, and that way have people from all over participate. So basically, logistics will be the following. Everybody will be muted, but if you want to ask a question or make a comment, raise your hand, your virtual hand. It's in the, if you go to the middle of your screen in the bottom, click on participants, you'll see that you can raise your hand. And then I can give you the word. Or you can just send your question through the chat or through Twitter, and we will gather them and include them in the appropriate moments. We also ask you if you can keep your video on, because that definitely makes the conversation more engaging. You know, we're people talking, and so really if you're there, it will make this so much more lively and interesting. And to the presenters, which we really appreciate your presence here, from all over the world, 8 countries actually, we asked you to keep to the time, 3 to 5 minutes from the beginning, so we can go straight into the discussion. And if you have any technical problems, please reach out to Irene through the chat, and we'll try to help you as much as we can. So, well, we're so excited to have you here. Denora, you can also reach out to her through the chat. She's actually putting in some of the instructions in there. And we are ready to go. Great. So we're going to start with Tarek Nash from GovRight. He's also the founder of Legislation Lab and has some interesting crowd law experiences going on. Tarek, I just unmuted you. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. This is Tarek. I'm from Morocco, and today I'll be talking about our platform, Legislation Lab. So should I share my screen here?
Yes, please. Share your screen.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. All right, so we are all witnessing how new technologies are used to raise the voice of people, like for political change, human rights, and the promotion of the rule of law. Yet little has been noticed on how these laws are drafted, like how changes has happening on the drafting of the laws. So the question is, should we really be content with elections or referendums to involve citizens on the lawmaking process? Well, I mean, the public is pushing for more. In 2011 alone, there were street protests in more than 80 countries. And that's not only in the Arab world. We've seen that in Spain, in the US. And the fact is, societies are changing so rapidly, and the governments are not keeping up. I remember myself walking along hundreds of thousands of youth on the streets of Morocco in 2011 and claiming the reform of the constitution. I was particularly then concerned that the referendum was not appropriate to reflect our voices. So back then we decided to build a platform that enabled citizens to analyze and discuss the text of the constitution. I mean, citizens could vote, comment in every single article. On that experience, 2 months later, we got like 200,000 users to put 10,000 comments. Just to put numbers in perspective, 200,000 is larger than any political party members base in Morocco. Looking back, basically 40% of the platform recommendations exist today on the new constitution. So from that experience, we built on other countries, and earlier this year we decided to build Legislation Lab, to build a generic solution that makes it really simple to anybody, anywhere to launch a legislative debates, and that's legislationlab.org. I mean, Legislation Lab is the platform for citizen participation in the legislative process. In a matter of few clicks, the platform generates a dedicated site for any law in any country and using any sets of languages. I mean, we believe that Legislation Lab could be a powerful tool for participatory democracy. I mean, if implemented properly, we believe that this approach can contribute basically to peace and stability. And by the way, Eid Mubarak for the Muslim community, Happy Kippur for the Jewish community. So for Legislation Lab, within 6 months of launch, we are already supporting 9 languages and are getting requests from 16 countries. And we'll be talking one of the examples, like in Chile, a local NGO is currently using the platform for La Constitución de Todos, that will be presented later, to change the 1980 Pinochet constitution. In Iraq, for example, in Kurdistan, Iraq, a minority rights group used the platform to deal with the tyranny of the majority. The idea is like how we can listen to the minorities to define what's we mean by minority rights. Yet we feel like we're just scratching the surface here. I mean, in our 6-month experience, we feel we remain humble in front of like the challenges to be really more inclusive, more engaging, and more impactful. Just to share quickly some experiences, like in Somalia earlier this year, we talked to the governments, and the challenge there was the internet penetration is 2%. So really, like using like only an online support was not sufficient. So the idea there, how can we complement it? We're using like SMS or phone, etc. Doing participation alone, and example, I think Sean will discuss it later, we really is not sufficient because it's not good enough to do participation with no education. So we really need to find a more powerful way to do civic education on the matter. Another challenge that we confronted is the example of a more mature democracy like in the US, where we use Legislation Lab in the City Council of New York. I think Ben Carlos will be presenting it later, where we feel that there is an apathy or complacent citizens, where while the channels of communication are there, they're not really engaged. And that's an interesting challenge by itself in this type of democracies. I mean, in general, the feeling is like we feel we are at the verge of a disruptive change that's had the potential of closing this important gap between the government and the public to strengthen the culture of the rule of law. But I mean, we are just about to start on the topic.
Thank you so much, Tarek. That was really interesting. Oh, you're still continuing. Okay, great.
No, I think I'm done for now.
Okay, great. Actually, since you mentioned Chile, we were going to continue with them. Daniela from La Constitución de Todos, or the Constitution for All, is going to present because they are actually using Legislation Lab software. But thank you for presenting those challenges. We will have a chance to discuss them. You know, low internet penetration, lack of civic education, apathy. Thanks for presenting those. So Daniela, if you can share, if you can talk. Okay, Daniela, I just unmuted you. Sorry, there you are.
Hi everyone. I'm Daniela. I'm from La Constitución de Todos. Seems being after Tariq is a good introduction for us, because actually La Constitución de Todos, or everyone's constitution, is pretty linked to GovRights initiative. So just as a brief context, in Chile, our constitution was made during the dictatorship in the 80s by Pinochet. And although it's had a few changes during its history, it's more or less the same constitution. So there has been a public debate about the constitution during the last 30 years, and more so since democracy was returned. And during that debate, it has been becoming stronger and stronger, the need or the request for a new constitution for Chile. So there's been a discussion what is the appropriate way to change the constitution and what it should say. But the debate has been growing on the need to change the constitution. So in that context, for the last elections, there was a big movement claiming for a constitutional assembly, and it was growing. So actually, a group of friends were very interested in the issue. And we heard about this initiative that was held in Morocco. In Morocco, that was the GovRights platform, the one that Tariq just commented about. So we had heard about it, and we contacted Tariq, and we said, what's the platform now, and what are the possibilities of us using that platform for Chile, that software for Chile? And we spoke, and we had an agreement, and we launched the site for Chile with La Constitución de Todos. And we've been developing this site aiming to probably two objectives. One is generating a space for public participation, for participation of people in these issues. Chile is a country that I'd say doesn't have very much involvement in public issues, but it has been growing during the past years with more mobilization and participation. And the second objective was to help provide civic education, constitutional education through this platform. So we launched the site on June 30th. It's been now on for 3 months. Everyone that works in this initiative is volunteer, and we have no funding, so we give what we can to the project and to the initiative, but we've got certain limitations due to the fact that we each have jobs, other jobs, and have to do this in our free time, so we do as best as we can. And this has had some reflect on how much the initiative has been difundida, commented. So we've had a lot of people entering the site and maybe looking and reading, but we've had a hard time getting people to commit in the conversation, to participate actively in the discussion, to comment, to vote. To the platform, what it does, it shows you the actual constitution of Chile, each article, and you can comment each article. You can say, I like it, I don't like it. You can vote for it. You can draft a new version of the article. So you can more or less participate in the debate regarding the current constitution of Chile. And we've seen that people more or less go in the platform, but they have a hard time actively participating. So we think that that's our biggest desafío, challenge for this time now. So I guess that's more or less it, and I guess we can talk more about it later.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Yeah, definitely participation is a big challenge, and we thank you for bringing that up. We're actually going to have a whole discussion on that one. So we really look forward to those who have had successful participation to being able to share your best practices. So coming up next, we are going to listen to Sean, who is actually in Syria now, but he is going to talk about the Libyan experience. So he's not going to use any video. Sean, can you please talk? Good to see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me, Maria?
Okay, great.
Yep. Very good. Shall I start?
Yes. Are you going to share your screen, or should I show your presentation?
If you have the presentation, if it's easy for you to...
Okay, I will share it.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to focus on slides 5, from slide 5 down, to save a little bit of time, and if we have time afterwards, I can come back.
Okay, I'll go to slide 2, 3.
Slide 5. Yeah. Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Deely, and it's a pleasure to take part in this event with all of you and to hear about your experiences. I've been working for the UN for the past 22 years or so, and on post-conflict transition, mainly governance and post-conflict transition. And between 2011 and 2014, I worked in Libya for the UN, and there I was basically working on designing a series of civic engagement initiatives to support civil society groups and NGOs who wanted to participate in the political transition process. And one of those initiatives was, it involved designing and developing an e-participation platform with broad alliance of Libyan NGOs, civil society organizations, and so on. And actually, while I was there, I heard about Tariq's work in Morocco on the Moroccan constitution, and got in touch with Tariq, having been in touch with Beth quite a bit about the book she wrote on wiki government, and then got in touch with Tariq to help develop and build the platform. And I'm just going to focus on the 5 prerequisites. They're not exactly prerequisites. Some of them are prerequisites. They lead to prerequisites, but they're, for me, 5 critical components in the platform that we designed. And then I'll move to the platform. The 5 prerequisites, as I like to call them, are information, education, opinion forming and aggregation, expression or challenge for expression, and contribution, or some sort of mechanism for a contribution. And the idea is, of course, if you want to have participation, the minimum that you need is information. What's planned, who's responsible, what's the process, how can people participate? This basic information is certainly a prerequisite to any sort of participation in the constitution making process. Education is the second aspect, and that's if people want to participate in a more meaningful way, they need some basic education about what a constitution is, what it does, how it works, and what are the main issues that are going to be decided. The third aspect is the opinion forming and aggregation issue, because you can have information, you can even have a degree of education about a topic or an issue, but it's critical that people are able to form opinions about what's being decided in the constitution. What are the options? The different options, whether you talk about a Westminster system of government, or do you want presidential, do you go for the sort of typical, in inverted commas, strongman type of system that's so prevalent in the region, or do you go for the more collaborative Westminster form, and so on. But the question is, what do I think would work best in my particular country? And on a whole range of issues, what are the best options for me, for my circumstances? It might differ from one region to another, it might differ even from one profession to another. So the point is to be able to form opinions and to aggregate them with others. Then you have the opportunity or the expression channel, the opportunity to express your opinion once you've formed it. And again, this is critical beyond the fact that it's cathartic. I mean, in a political transition process, it's essential that people are able to communicate their aspirations or their concerns about particular problems that they would like to see addressed through the Constitution, or specific provisions that they would like to see in the Constitution. And the fifth aspect of participation is this idea of contribution, and the whole idea that for some civil society advocates, or from some technical experts, or for some people who feel very strongly about an issue, they may wish to contribute by drafting or contributing to the drafting of a particular clause or article. So, I mean, it's, that whole idea of the wiki constitution or of participation in the drafting of an article may only apply to a few hundred people in a given context or in a given country, but they may be a very, very important, influential group of people. Let me move on to slide 6 or 7. It's this one, yeah, very good, thanks, Maria. So basically, these are the prerequisites, very good. Let's go to slide 7 if we can, Maria, thanks. This is then the platform that we designed and that Tarek built, and I have to say built and rebuilt several times because it changed many times as we got feedback and as we got new input and new ideas and feedback from people who were involved and engaged. And let me very quickly run through the elements of it. The information as a basic prerequisite, you can see on the left-hand side, latest news. And the objective of this component was to concentrate in one site all the major news stories about the constitution-making process and related events. So people would have a one-stop shop, if you like, where they could go and find out what was actually happening. We combined that with a Send Your News component, which was designed to provide NGOs with the space to publicize their civic awareness and outreach work. And that was critical because people could go there and see where could they attend public debates or conferences or town hall meetings, training workshops, youth forums, all of these things that were going on in Libya at the time. It also allows a country in charge, it allows them to see what areas are underserved with mobilization activities, with information activities, and so on. You put this on a map. Tarek built a map. We had a map on the platform, and you could see where these events were taking place. The second aspect I talked about was education, and this we use the tutorials, and again in partnership with universities and with NGOs and civil societies, who recorded short video tutorials about specific constitutional topics, and people could download them and watch them in a group together, or they could take them into a classroom environment, or they could watch them, they could watch them online if they wanted to. I think, you know, when you're into environments where you have cultural obstacles to groups, might be minority groups, it might be women, going to hotels to participate in public events, or where they have to seek permission to go out of the house, and so on. Something like this is a very, very useful way to help with education on particular constitutional issues. The third aspect we talked about was the idea of opinion forming and aggregation. And here we combine basically a blog with a discussion forum. And again, in a partnership with civil societies, NGOs, academics, universities, and so on, you have the possibility, people, experts, advocates, interested parties who will write a short blog, 300, 500-word blog. We had 2 being written per week, and they were connected to a discussion forum where we could highlight particular questions. And you have things like, for example, you know, the standard format, 5 things the Constitution Drafting Assembly should do in its first meeting. So that gets people thinking about what are they focused, what are they doing, and so on, and helps to educate people. The fourth aspect I talked about was a channel for expression. And here we used, at the time, we didn't know anything about Snapchat, but at the time we used basically the idea that anybody with a smartphone and upload. So you could upload. Anybody with a smartphone could take a video of themselves, 30 seconds, short video, or another person. It might be an elderly person, a sick person. It might be somebody from their family. It might be somebody from their class, talking about or explaining what it was that they saw as a priority to be addressed in the Constitution or addressed by the Constitution Drafting Assembly. And they become a sort of a form of submission to the Drafting Assembly of themselves. I mean, the idea was at the end of the Constitution making process, we would bring together the best of these clips and make a short 15-minute movie that could again be seen by the Drafting Assembly in public and so on. And then the fifth element, this write the Constitution element that you can see on the right-hand side, that's really what we wanted to design. We didn't get to launch, unfortunately, because of developments in Libya, but the idea again was that people a small group of very influential people, and again, as I say, they could be advocates for specific rights, or they could be technical experts, or there could be people with particular interest, academics, whatever it might be, could actually get involved and write a clause, a provision, or some element of the Constitution. And it doesn't have to be that they write the actual Constitution itself. Maybe it's what we often refer to as a parallel Constitution, that is the civil society version of the Constitution, and you can compare and contrast and see if people are getting what they want or what they like or they vote for on a website or on a platform. I'll just have a quick look at the lessons, Maria, and then...
Okay. And then we have to wrap up because it's been a
We're
great presentation.
Very quickly, content production strategy. We focus very much on design at the beginning and on the design of the platform. And so, you know, what you find out is if you want to have a 5-section platform like this, you need an awful lot of content, and you need a very specific strategy that deals with the timing and the sequencing of the content, who produces it, and when is it going to be most interesting for people. And there's a lot to talk about maybe in the discussion around that issue. The whole multimedia campaign lesson is, you know, at the beginning we thought we were doing a civic education type of platform and so on, but at the end of the day, if you want to keep people engaged, you have to combine with TV, you have to combine with radio, with print media, and you need to have a multimedia campaign strategy for this. And the capacity issue is critical as well, particularly in conflict-affected countries. You really often have difficulties finding the specialized staff. Tech-savvy communications professionals are what you really need to be partnering with you on a project like this. Okay, let me leave it there. Thanks a lot, Maria.
Thank you very much, Sean. Besides those 3 lessons, I do want to also say that something important that comes from your experience is the necessity for agile software development, you know, the experience of designing and redesigning and adapting the platform. Chile also mentioned that when we talked before the conference, you really need to adapt to what the user's needs are. So I think that's definitely something we want to talk about later. So now I want to invite Joseph Lentz from NEOS. He's also with Carl Arthur. So I am unmuting you, Joseph and Carl, so you can present.
Thanks a lot. I'll try to share my screen. Whoop. Does it work?
Yes, it does.
Very good. So, hello everyone. I'm Joseph from NEOS, the NEOS Lab. We're a liberal citizen movement founded in 2012 in Austria. And Carl Arthur, who's with me today, is working in the parliament, in the parliamentary faction. And I'm working with the Party Academy. So we're about 9 people, and we're the party's think and do tank. And what I want to show you today quickly is the way we are set up and the way we work, as everything we do is set up in a participatory mode. So NEOS was founded with the mission to find a different approach to politics, to make it more open, and we understand ourselves as an open laboratory for new politics. So what you can see here on the screen, first of all, unfortunately it's in German, but I'll talk you through, is an overview of so-called thematic groups we have. So thematic groups are really open networks of you could call it volunteer policy advisors. So we have about 1,000 of those all over Austria on all levels, so the national, the regional, and the communal level. And they get together, for example, here in economy, or as you can see, ethical questions, or democratic innovation, or human rights. And what they do is they basically, they get together and discuss policies, they draft policies, which I will get to later, and then make proposals for parliamentary motions or proposal for chapters of our party program, which we see as a permanent, being in permanent beta mode. So it's always up for discussion and always up for review. So what you can I change the window here? Oh yeah, here. What you can see now here is the so-called cockpit. So what we offer these thematic groups, these open networks, are basically is a variety of tools. So the calendar, CRM, Confluence, which is our wiki, the Policy Forge, which I will get to in a second, Facebook groups, Adobe Connect to collaborate and work together, on and on and on. So this is basically a powerful cockpit for them. They can use. But of course, another challenge which you can see here is that we have basically a variety of platforms. And one thing we're grappling with is that it's a fragmented landscape, an ecosystem that is not yet integrated. So one challenge is that we have too many platforms. But perhaps we can discuss that later. One platform that we're offering is the so-called Policy Forge, the Themenschmiede, which is a collaborative drafting platform for the people, so they can discuss and review and draft together. So what you can see here, for example, is one policy proposal, and you can see here that this is being worked on and discussed and reviewed. And so this is happening basically all the time, and then discussed at general assemblies of NEOS, which happen every between 4 and 8 weeks. And so this is a customized platform. So again, it's very, very, very interesting to learn about Legislation Lab and other platforms you're using, because it's working okay, but it's a customized thing. And of course, there are some challenges to that as well. Finally, to get to the end, one particular format that we're using is the so-called Volksbarcamp. So the English translation would be, well, basically the people's or the citizens' bar camp. So that's, as you can see here, is a crowdsourced startup politics. So it's about crowdsource. It's about the town hall style format, which we're using to go into cities and towns and get some people together and ask them, what if you could make an inquiry in Parliament, or if you could table a motion in Parliament, what would it be? And in the course of an evening, we're drafting with we have a representative there, and they're drafting collaboratively motions and inquiries, and some of those already have been tabled in the Austrian Parliament over the last months. Now, as we are on the opposition, we have 5% and 9 representatives at the moment of 186. Of course, we're not yet at the stage where we're really kind of doing crowd law, but that this will be the next step for us. So one of our challenges, besides, as I said, integrating the technology, of course, is the social one. How do we keep people engaged? And finally, once we might get into government, so the next elections will be in 2018, the big question for us will be, how do we scale all of this? How do we scale a platform that works for perhaps hundreds of people, then for perhaps thousands or even 10,000s of people if we want to do it for Austria as a nation. And those are some of the questions that we're facing at the moment for the next couple of years, I suppose. So that's it from me for the beginning, and looking forward to discussing.
Thank you so much, Joseph, and also Carl Arthur from participating for NEOS. Really, scale is a big challenge. You do have quite a bit of people already participating in all your different commissions, so you do have some kind of scale, but definitely if you want to go to the whole country, that is something we look forward to everybody's ideas on. So now we're going to hear from Victoria Alsina. She is a researcher that is working with the Spanish party Podemos on their participatory crowdsourcing policies, and she was going to talk about that and a couple platforms they're using for that.
Good morning. Do you listen me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria, and I'm a visiting researcher at Harvard. And this morning, of course, I'm speaking with you from Boston. But in our team, we are 7 people. We are 2 independent researchers and 5 active politicians from Podemos. Now I'm going to briefly explain you what is Podemos and what are they doing related with Crow Law. Podemos, meaning we can in Spanish, is a Spanish political party created on May 2014, less than 1 year and a half ago, by a Spanish left activist protesting against democracy that they feel that no longer represents them. Podemos got 5 seats of the 54 seats that Spain has in the last European Parliament elections, and from then till now, its popularity is increasing in each poll, challenging the traditional, bipartidism in Spain. Podemos represents themselves as a government party, and in the last local and regional election in Spain, they won several seats. The most important thing is that the possibility of a Podemos victory in the next general elections, this next November, less than a month, in coalition with another party, remains real. The idea behind the party is simple. They don't want citizens only going to vote every 4 years. They want citizens doing politics in a day-to-day basis, and they bet on new technologies as the main tool to interact with them. As a researchers, we thought that it is important to study Podemos because they are promoting political participation at a big scale, but also because the numbers show that they had a big success doing it. They created several tools to promote this online participation, and now I want to highlight a couple of them. One tool that they use to generate deliberation, that is called Plaza Podemos, and another tool that they use to contribute to organize massive brainstormings. This one is called Upgree. The first one, Plaza Podemos, has been designed as a place of contact and debate for all followers of Podemos in order to share their thoughts and ideas. They organize the debate through thematic and territorial circles, and around 15,000 people regularly use it. The second one, that is called Upgree, this tool fits well with the prototypical Crow Law process. Anyone can suggest proposals, and the ones with the most votes get approved. It's a tool that allows them to perform mass surveys in a very quick manner. For example, they use it and the participation normally is around 60,000 people at the same time. So it's a good tool for them, and we can speak more about it later on the debate. I want to highlight the main challenge that Podemos are facing now. The first one is apply all these participation mechanisms that they have been using for the political internal organization in a government scenario. Now they have the chance to govern, and they need to apply it to the legislation process, and also they need to apply it to design public policies. The second challenge is to process all data they collect online to really support the subsequent decision-making processes. They accumulate a lot of information, and it's difficult sometimes to organize it in a consistent way. And the third challenge that I want to highlight is that they want to maintain good participation ratios. So I can speak much more about Podemos, but I think we will have the chance to do it later on today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Really, there's big challenges there, as you said, processing information, especially when a lot of these initiatives start with volunteers, and the challenge of managing the process, the expectations with other people that are also volunteering their time and want feedback. That is definitely a big challenge. And of course, a challenge of scale, which Podemos and also NEOS, once you reach government, you definitely want to branch out your participation from internal to external, and that's going to be an interesting discussion too. So now we're going to go back to the US, to New York City. We're going to talk to Ben Kalos. So Ben, I have just unmuted you. If you can do your presentation.
Yes, please. I'm just going down to one screen. Just if you can give me one moment. Let me just turn on screen sharing.
We're at some point we're having around 40 something participants.
Yes.
So we encourage you to live tweet on using our hashtag CrowdLaw. Follow us on Twitter, and remember to send your questions to the chat. Denora is moderating that, and on Twitter, Julia is gathering the questions for what's coming next. So Ben, if you want, I can share your presentation too.
Sure. What is the best way to screen share? Forgive me for being the one who didn't. Oh, there we go.
Okay, good. It's in the middle. Yeah, there. Great.
So thank you for joining. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. Because I'm sharing my screen, it'll be difficult for me to exactly take all the questions, but you can tweet me, you can hit me on email, just happy to help. So I'm gonna run through a lot of the things you have to do as a politician in terms of 1.0 before you get to 2.0. So first piece is do community events every single night. After that, we table at street fairs. I stand in the streets, people tell me I'm doing a good job because they see me. We also have something that's really important, which is an open house once a month. It's called First Fridays. It's something that nobody really wants to do, but now other elected officials are starting to do it too, because they're hearing from people that they can come to mine, but they can't go to their own. Similarly, we also do a policy night. This is in person, and that's actually what people demand most. They don't care about calling, emailing, whatever. They always want to meet the elected official. The other piece is resources. So we have free resources in our office. We give away condoms. Anything we can give away in the office, people want. We also do lots of forums on things that matter. So I have a lot of seniors in my district, so we do a senior health fair. So that's in terms of what we can do in person. The other piece is, so government 1.0, where are we coming from? So typically you get a newsletter from people once or twice a year, and that's the franking privilege people have heard about. We send out emails to people once a month. We are also available over social media. In my case, we have a city council account. Each member also has it. We are also putting up our legislation so people can see it, not that anyone actually understands what's going on based on this interface. And trying to understand what's going on there. We also tried to live stream our meetings. Again, not something that most people are engaging. They actually still won't release how many people are watching our live streams. I also have a column in the local press. And again, I'm just trying to get to people where they are. I have a public access TV show. And then all the council members get a website. And so that's all broadcast. It's not very useful. It's a good way for you to try to get your message out, but it's not listening. So then we have accountability and communications, which comes from government 2.0. So we have our social media with responses. So that's where people are actually starting to get used to talking over Twitter. When I send out a newsletter, I always include a questionnaire so people can actually engage me. So I've been able to take a very 1.0 piece of communication and turn it into a 2.0 communication. Anytime I send an email, every single email, at the end of every single paragraph, and it's a very long email, there's always a call to action. And that call to action always drives somebody to a landing page on my website, which I can measure, where I'm collecting their information. A lot of times I'm collecting the same information from the same people, but occasionally it'll get forwarded out, and then my email list grows. Websites can have interactivity. This is the New York State Senate website, and things that you want on any website are petitions, email lists by topic so people can follow up on a specific issue. This is a garbage dump they want to put in a residential neighborhood. When you have events on the website, it's important that people can actually reserve online. That also drives traffic. We also allow people to submit ideas and solutions. Because of the framework I'm using, which is Drupal, we're able to have apps that I can add at a moment's notice. This app is asking for lighting along a corridor. And then we also have legislation with commenting, which is really what today is about. So the New York State Senate website, as well as my website, uses Drupal, where you can comment. The other piece is we're using Madison, we're using Councilmatic, we're using Legislation Lab, Democracy OS, and of course we put things on GitHub. Some key things everyone needs in their jurisdictions is 311 so that people can call in government services, open legislation so your legislation is actually online, live streaming of meetings so things aren't happening in the background, open data so you can actually govern with knowledge, putting your city record online, which is what I just did, so that people actually know what's happening, and then making your law free and open. It was available in cuneiform tablets, but now belongs to Westlaw and Lexis. One of the things we've done is we've actually created a coalition in the United States, and if anyone's from the US and interested, we've got the Free Law Founders. And so that was just a quick piece of just going in, but I wanted to go over some of the challenges. The first piece, and one of the reasons that I formed the Free Law Founders, is because we have to oppose institutional inertia that just doesn't want change. Additionally, in terms of something that I think folks from Legislation Lab pointed to, was dealing with your audience. So my constituency is older. They do have a huge amount of access to the internet, but they're not as comfortable talking online. It's hard to convince people that even though there's a previous way, an old way of engaging, now they should engage with me online. One huge issue, and this is kind of a challenge for everyone listening, this is my call to action to you, is right now all my engagement is happening in data silos by medium and application, which means you engage with me in person, you engage with me via email, you engage with me on Legislation Lab, you engage with me on Madison, and as a result, all the conversations are fragmented. One of the things I've been starting to ask different developers is to come up with a common framework where you can tag a piece of legislation, and regardless of app neutral, people can engage in one conversation. There's a lack of buy-in, whether I'm talking to constituents face-to-face or people online. The question I'm getting again and again is, how do I know that the contributions will actually be accepted? What's worth getting? Why should I put my time into it? With regard to my staff, I'm a software developer turned elected official. There aren't many of us. It's not something you're going to find in a government staff. So very few of my staffers. It's very hard to try to afford somebody who understands GitHub at the amount that we can pay in government salaries, as well as the type of person who's going to know GitHub is somehow going to want to deal with constituents complaining about a pothole. So support, training, expertise, and a desire to use the tools among staff is a challenge. The other big issue is actually trying to work with constituents in a way that actually helps move the issue forward. I'm just as likely to get trolled for asking for feedback than I am to actually get the feedback I want. So a lot of the time we're feeling like we're asking for people to engage, but instead of engaging, they're just arguing about whether or not we should be using that platform or what the license should be or things like that, which doesn't actually help us move things forward. We have multiple calls to action. So first piece, we need somebody to draft. Then we need people to publicly comment. Then we need advocacy. That's a lot of calls to action when people are just used to click and make it happen. The feedback loops are very slow. In fact, I'm not even sure there is a feedback loop here. You propose a bill, the bill gets introduced, it sits in committee, you have to ask people to sign on, eventually you get a hearing, then you have to advocate and get people to do it. But these are all very different skill sets that are very challenging, especially when you're trying to work with people who commented online and they're expecting a result. Results. When people win or lose, they're happy or sad, but either way they tend to disengage. One of the challenges that we're seeing is once the people have gotten what they want or not gotten what they want, they move on, and it's been tough to cultivate a group of people who continue to stay engaged. The last piece is, despite all this, and sorry to put all the challenges out there, but we're trying a lot of different things, and I also wanted to be honest about where we are. There needs to be a commitment to agile and iteration, and just I'm committed to keeping and I'm going to keep trying and failing until I succeed. So I think that's the piece that I would share with everyone, which is just keep it going, and hopefully we will figure out how to make it work, but it will take a lot of work from all of us. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you so much, Ben. Really, that is a big list of challenges, but I really like that you bring the government perspective here. Being from government before this job, I definitely can understand also in terms of staffing and also when it backfires, like trolling. So thank you for sharing. Those are really great challenges. So now we're going to hear from Cristiano. He also is going to bring the government perspective because Cristiano is from Brazil and he works in the House of Representatives. So I am unmuting you now, Cristiano, and welcome to the conference.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm talking from the Hacker Lab. It's an institutional body inside the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies, but we believe it's a kind of hybrid body because we work a lot with some collaborators from outside, from not only with hackers, but civil society in general. I'll try to share my screen now. Okay, is that working? Can you see my slides?
No, we can't. I have them though. Do you want me to share them?
Let me see what works better.
Oh, there. Yes.
It's working now? Yeah.
It's working. Thank you.
Okay. Just briefly to say, so what we do here, we try to implement the open parliament policy. And as we know, this kind of policy to open the parliament to have two major approaches. One is transparency and another is participation, engaging civil society in lawmaking process. So we believe that we can have different kind of contributions because cities are very diverse. So we believe that, and we are talking about to participate in the federal level, for lawmaking in federal level, which means it's more abstract than in the local level. So, but we believe even very simple, ordinary citizen can participate, for example, to discuss, to say something about the problem they are living. And if you go to bring some solutions and to create new policies, we need more kind of expertise in these kind of contributors. So we believe we can have different kind of contributions from different groups of citizens. And we try to create and recreate this e-democracy platform since 2009. And what we do here is offer a great menu with different set of tools for the congressman to lead this crowdsourcing effort. So normally it starts with a rapporteur, a congressman in an important position to draft a specific bill, and we offer him a set of tools, and we let to him decide which tools that he wants to use. For example, some of them just want to use brainstorming tools like forums, something like that, and some others want to go to draft, and then we use wiki. During the committee's hearing, we have this chat, a live chat, so people can send questions and comments and ideas to the congressman during the hearing, so empowering them to use crowdsourcing to better interrogate the civil society representatives who are there in that kind of typical committee hearings. And of course, we use forums and we stimulate the use of videos in forums because we know people want to see the congressman videos. So that's the reason we create an app. You can download the Democracia in the Android store. So it was much easier to the congressman use and to participate, to engage in the Democracia because we found out that the most of them, they're not used to log in a regular computer. They prefer to use these kind of apps in their mobile phones. So they can record, for example, a video self of themselves and send their opinion and to the citizens. It's very important to have the congressman participating in this process because people want to see the congressman. People like to engage when they feel they are heard by the congressman. Our new tool, it's the new version of this WikiLegis. It's a wiki tool to drafting, and people using it and can send specific comments to every part of the text, or even can send specific their own version of the text. So after we finish this process, so the congressman can have a very simple, easy to understand report with specific comments and ideas of drafting. It's available in this web address, and you can also download. It's also available in GitHub. All we do is open source, so people can use. And talking about the success, we have a couple of successes so far, and a lot of failures so far as well. But one of them is civil rights for internet users bill. After we have received so many contributions, the rapporteur in charge, the Congressman Alessandro Molon, was very sensitive and very open to those contributions. So he used some of them and he incorporated some of them into the final draft version. And then he wrote and expressively wrote the citizen's name, giving them credits in an official report to that specific part they contribute in the draft. So, and then this bill was approved and then was enacted. Just to this image, just showing to you how it works internally. So we managed to get all these contributions from forums, wikis, chats, and all over. And we send this for a legislative consultant. We have about 200 consultants here in the chamber. And they are hired, they have a tenure position, they are specialists in public policy themes like health, education, security. And they are a key factor actually, because they prepare a technical summary of these contributions and send to the lawmaker who's in charge to draft the rapporteur normally. And then he will make his political judgment to decide which those contributions will or not be incorporated in the final draft. And then submit to a committee. Normally committees approves his recommendation, his draft, and then it goes to the floor. Finally, just to say that at least in our experience here, we need to have the combination of these three key factors. One, of course, we need a congressman who is very open and sensitive to use crowd law process. Another one is the one I just told you about, the importance of having a consultant who will make this technical judgment, which is very important. If the consultants are not engaged in the process, so it's very hard to have a success in this experience. So, and finally, in society engagement, so I believe the outreach issue is the most difficult thing. It's hard to engage people because there are a lot of participatory platforms, and people are, as you know, don't trust in Congress. So it's hard to overcome these barriers. And another thing, but when we get to reach out people, it's important that in some issues we found out that didn't work so well. For example, when there's a moral or religious question, like for example, gay marriage or kind of very extreme complex questions like political reform or tax reform. So when we have this complex or polemic or government versus opposition issue, normally it doesn't work so well. And finally, so we think that social issues issues that people are more close to, like education, health, and security, there are more chances to have a good success. So that's it for a while. Thank you for attention. So we may have a time to go deep into those issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cristiano. I would just want to highlight there the necessity, what you mentioned about having a champion. So like the Speaker of the House that really highlighted the contributions of citizens. And so having a champion in government is so important for these processes to go forward. And also the challenge of the lack of trust, I think, is very relevant, especially when you're working from government in these processes. So now we're going to hear from Joonas Pekkanen, who is from the Open Ministry project in Finland. Joonas?
Yes, hello. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So yes, my name is Joonas Pekkanen. I am founder of the civil society organization Open Ministry in Helsinki, in Finland. I'm also a member of the board in the Open Knowledge Finland chapter, so active in the Transparency International Finland site. So working with freedom of information and transparency, open data, open democracy issues, and now just recently, beginning of last month, I am also working for the public sector now. So I was recruited to the city of Helsinki, now in charge of the online citizen participation platforms for the city of Helsinki. So we already have some quite interesting platforms on the municipal level working in Helsinki as prototypes, and now we are putting a lot of emphasis into e-participation tools, collaborative, into participatory budgeting exercises and such. So please feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in those and collaboration across cities or municipalities internationally. But today I would mostly like to share in a few minutes a few lessons learned and findings from the Open Ministry exercise. We had amendment to the constitution that came into force on the 1st of March in 2012 in Finland, and that now allows for citizens constitutional power to push legislative proposals into parliament. So that's enshrined in the constitution. Now it's the latest basic right of citizens in Finland, and it allows electronic participation, which sets it aside from some almost other citizens initiative mechanisms in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, for example. Finland is only a country of 5 million people, about 4 million people with voting rights, 18-year-olds, and 50,000 is the limit, the threshold for pushing your legislative suggestion into parliament, which is about 1.2% of the voting population. Open Ministry was founded in late 2011, 2012, when the Citizens Initiative Act was and the constitutional amendments to go with that were coming into force, and we launched when the law came into force the 1st of March 2012. And the idea was to provide assistance to any citizens and civil society organizations that want to crowdsource these law proposals, and also to of course advocate for the whole citizens initiative mechanism as it was a new tool, and it was unclear how these initiatives, although mechanism enshrined in the constitution, how these initiatives would then actually be processed in parliament. So what we managed to do was, together with, of course, a lot of other people, to make sure that these initiatives are now processed the same way as government-led law proposals or government bills coming into parliament. So, in effect, these law proposals are given full process. They go to the committees who arrange the expert hearings and prepare the reports, and then it comes to the parliamentary plenary and so on. So Open Ministries has been testing out different ad hoc tools for crowdsourcing these law proposals. There's now several hundred that have been launched, and that was kind of our fear also, that because the threshold to launch a citizens initiative is very low. So if people don't have support for it, and if they don't work together efficiently, the quality of the proposals themselves and the campaigns related to those proposals are not good enough quality. So that was kind of our motivation to begin with. There's now 13 initiatives that have reached this 50,000 threshold to merit parliamentary process, and Open Ministry has been involved in about half of those, six of those initiatives to some extent. For example, so far the only 6 have been processed. Six have been processed of these initiatives. So half of them are still waiting for process by the current parliament, and only one of the initiatives has been approved by the parliament. The rest have been rejected, mostly for varying reasons. But the only one that was accepted by parliament was one that we helped launch, and one that we had on our website as the example cases when we launched on 1st of March 2012, and that was the initiatives to allow same-sex marriages in Finland. So that was now approved last December, and is coming to force soon. But it's now accepted, and that was kind of the success case so far of proving that people can work together and actually change the law. That initiative, in that campaign, we got more than 100,000 people, so more than double the required threshold to sign that initiative on the first day when it was launched. So it was quite an exciting moment in democracy in Finland to see so many people coming together and making sure that the politicians are put to test with that initiative. It would have taken, the current sitting parliament would not have passed it either, and the previous one wouldn't have unless without this pressure. So it would have been at least 8 more years otherwise to push that reform.
Thank you so much, Jonas. I think that you bring up a really important thing that we're going to discuss in the last roundtable. It's about how we measure our impact. You mentioned like the amount of law proposals that are discussed or approved, which of those you're involved in. I see some metrics there, some indicators that we could think about in terms of how we measure our crowd law success. We're running short on time, so I appreciate your presentation. But we're going to go to our last speaker, which is Ronaldo Lemos. He's from Brazil, and the The platform is called Plataforma Brazil. It's a new platform. So Ronaldo, I'm unmuting you.
Thank you, Maria. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, very good. First thing I have to say is that Brazil is becoming a sort of a laboratory for civic technologies. So I'm glad that I'm speaking after Cristiano here, because I think he described his great work at the Brazilian Congress, but there has been like several different initiatives all over the country connected either with the government or with civil society or the academia that are basically using technology in order to promote civic participation. I'm going to describe basically one of the initiatives that I'm involved, and that goes back to the approval in Brazil of a law in 2014 that created a sort of an Internet Bill of Rights for Brazil. This was a law that was basically created throughout a civic participation platform that was put together online by my team in partnership with the Ministry of Justice very early in time. That was basically 2008, 2009. It was funny because at that time, the most popular social network in Brazil was Orkut and not Facebook. So that gives you a sense of how much things have changed since then. And basically, this was a very successful initiative. Let me share my screen with you, and I'll show you some interesting things. So basically, this is our research institute that has been responsible for this project, like the Institute for Technology and Society in Rio. And basically, this particular bill was praised, for instance, by the Financial Times as a sort of a landmark legislation, a very complex one, especially because it deals with net neutrality, privacy issues, freedom of speech online, and quite a lot of complicated issues. And the good thing about the platform was that no one was basically the winner or the loser. Because of this platform, all the participants and all the constituencies, they had to put their cards on the table and basically state very clearly what their positions were. And basically that created a much better level play field for the debate. And in the end, you see that it worked well, because in the legislation, all the different constituencies won something at the same time that they lost something. So there was no clear winner, and that is a good thing. And you can see the impact of the bill by the fact that it was also praised by people like Tim Berners-Lee. So you can read like a statement on his part praising both the process that the bill was created and also the result of the process. So this was a very interesting thing. So from that experience that I said, basically it took like 7 years of our lives here in Brazil to put this together and make it happen. We have learned quite a few lessons that now led us to create a new and more ambitious platform that is called right now Plataforma Brazil, Brazil Platform, which is a set of tools. We're building like a sort of a toolbox for civic participation technologies that we are using to promote and build public policies in Brazil and also legislation. And we started a pilot earlier this year through our institute with a very ambitious goal, which was to discuss political reform in Brazil. We decided that the pilot should deal with the most difficult discussion we could have, which is precisely political reform. And we did this by two different strategies. We used a pairwise technology, similar to all our ideas, a tool that I'm sure many of you must know, in order to establish a prioritization of what works the topics in the very vast universe of political reform that we wanted to cover. This was a very successful initiative. We gathered like more than 35,000 votes at the pilot, and that allowed us to prioritize 5 topics. What did we do next? We created a platform in which we transformed those 5 prioritized topics into questions. So we asked questions back to the participants about what they thought we should do in terms of these political reform topics that have been prioritized. So I'm sure most of you don't read Portuguese, but this is a list of the questions. And as you can see, each one of them created a vast amount of discussion. And the goal that we had in adopting this methodology was basically to break down very complex subjects into piecemeal parts that basically people could cope with. So the problem is, if you throw legislation over people, if you throw big subjects over people, most of them will have difficulties in responding to that or engaging with that. If you break down this task into smaller tasks that are basically easier to cope with, then your chances of succeeding are much higher. And basically, so we created a model in which we created a sort of a Quora public participation. You know, the website Quora. We created something that is based into questions. So we ask people what their opinion are in terms of specific topics, and we assemble those answers in order to build a sort of a white paper or a recommendation paper that is then we work with the public authorities. So I'm going to conclude. I suggest you that you keep an eye at this project because we just finished the pilot. We are very happy with the results and the impact that the discussions that we have raised about political reform has achieved. I believe we were able to influence a lot of the debates that happened in Brazil, including the recent Supreme Court decision that has prohibited companies to finance political campaigns in Brazil, which is a sort of a landmark decision for the country, something that Larry Lessig will be very envy to see that Brazil has achieved his main goal of the political campaign. So we're launching next a discussion about public safety in Brazil. This will be launched in 3 weeks. And I encourage you to take a look at that project because it's the next step for our platform. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronaldo. So we're going to go straight into our panel about outreach. It's going to be led by our director, Beth Novak. And I will unmute everybody who is one of the speakers. So I ask that all the speakers, since you're going to be unmuted, you please refrain from typing or other noises because we're going to be able to hear you in the background. So I'm unmuting Beth and the rest of the speakers. Thank you. Beth,
hi, I don't want to cut any. Hold on, we're going to turn off our, there we go. I don't want to cut into the time for discussion except to say that we can, I think, run 2 discussions in parallel. The conversation we're going to have now by voice, and then the other that we can continue in the chat. So people should feel free to continue to type their questions and respond to them. We'll take each of these 3 topics that we've outlined for discussion and turn them into a blog post where we can share some of the responses from the chat and also continue the discussion online. So very quickly, I think we've heard a lot of diverse reflections on what it's take to reach out to people and to institutions, so to the individual participants who are joining a crowd law exercise, as well as to the parliaments and other institutions that are involved in the decision-making side of a crowd law exercise. And I think it's worth spending a few minutes on hearing from people their kind of summary reflections reflections, if you could help tease out for us, for those people who've been doing crowd law for the last year or two or three, is what you've really learned about motivations for citizens to participate. So focusing first on the individual aspect. I want to ask people if they could just tease out very quickly one bullet point about one thing that's worked in terms of motivations, and for those who've suffered from low participation rates, and I'm sure everybody feels their participation could be higher, what's the one reason that the thing you wish you could change that you think would encourage more participation? So if I could start by, I'm going to turn to Daniela and then to Cristiano, and then I invite all the speakers though who want you to go around and share one bullet about one thing that's worked and one thing that hasn't in terms of incentives to individuals to participate. So Daniela, do you have a reflection?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my connection. Can you go on to the next one and then come back to me?
I will. Cristiano, what's one,
Yes.
the one thing about incentives, what's worked and what hasn't?
Yes, thank you. But I think it's very important to mapping out in specific niches, specific social networks regarding the issue that will be discussed when we have this open discussion. Of course, we have to work to be open to anyone, to whatever citizens, and we try to reach them out. But at least in our experience here, it's important when we have those social groups involved already in that issue, because they are very worried about that issue. They are working hard to get things done. And for example, it worked great with this civil right for internet users, as Ronaldo mentioned. And it worked, for example, the youth statute for youth in Brazil. It worked very good. And also for people with disability. And we had just regulation given civil rights, guaranteeing civil rights for people with disability. So when we have these very engaged groups, so it works very well. And of course, when we have a congressman very involved in this issue as well. For me, it's the most challenging. It's reaching out the majority of the Brazilian population in a country as Brazil, a continental country, with this digital divide issue. It has been very hard because we have a lot of participatory platforms around now. We have it's very good, right? But it's still a paradox because, for example, democracy has to compete for audience.
I want to interrupt just for a minute because I want to push you on things like lack of internet penetration. We can't do a lot about in the short term. So I want you to focus bullet length so we can hear from many people. One thing that you have that has not worked that can be changed that you would recommend. So in terms of incentives.
No, I would say that it didn't work to engage some kind of politicians or congressmen who are not so open to this process. It's very important when we have congressmen participate because people want to talk to those guys who will decide. So for me, I would focus now to engage more congressmen in the discussions. And it's still a marginal process, just a few members of the Congress are really engaged in this process. That's it.
Daniela, do you want to add anything to that?
Hi. So for participation, we've seen that what works well for us is actually having personal interactions with the people participating in the platform, not just online communication. So when we presented the platform in, for example, a community that's studying for constitutional processes or whatever, or for organizations or NGOs, or when we've presented the platform personally, we've had more engagement in participation than when we've only done, internet, like Twitter or Facebook or networks and contacting people through those sites. So personal engagement, I think, works for getting to people to actively participate in the site. That would be maybe just as a bullet. for this.
And how about reflections from anybody? And I invite anybody who's unmuted to jump in. Is also how you reach a diverse audience. So this question comes from Tiago Peixoto. I'm not sure if he had a bad connection, so I think he's still here. But he wanted us to focus on the question of diversity of participation. So hearing not only from the people we know, but the people we don't know, and from diverse representatives of society. So I'm wondering if people have had luck with the diversity question. Please dive in, or you can. You don't no need to raise your hand. If you're unmuted, you should just feel free to speak.
Beth, can I jump in for a moment?
Speak because I can't be heard. Yeah, please go ahead. I think Sean, that was you.
Yeah, that was me, Beth. Sorry. Just one thing that we find is critical is the whole issue of timing and sequencing. And what was presented to us in Libya, the point that was being made by a number of NGOs was that you don't. The way they expressed it was you don't do your Eid shopping or your Christmas shopping. You don't do your Christmas shopping in March or in April. There has to be a focus. There has to be a deadline, and you have to have a campaign strategy that builds towards that deadline. And in that sense, I think what we can learn a lot from marketing and communication specialists, and I think in particular the whole issue of social marketing and how do we actually create a sense of urgency around the deadline, around the timing, around something that's going to happen. It's obviously when you deal with constitution making processes, you have those deadlines already built in, and sometimes they shift and they change, but you can build events to target specific deadlines and you can build up a sense of urgency around those things. But I think that the timing and the sequencing is critical.
So there are those people who've also talked about engaging people in setting the agenda for debate, not just getting comments on after a draft regulation or legislation has already been selected. I'm wondering if there is reflection on whether that participation at the whether engaging people earlier is more effective, or in fact because it's not as relevant to your point, Sean, and it's less tied to it's too many shopping days. Does that defeat create a disincentive for engagement?
So I'm sorry, Beth, I didn't get all of it. Could you just give it to me again?
That question is to everyone. I think we've heard two competing reflections about engagement. One is start early, engage people in setting the topics and choosing the laws and the regulations that will be the subject of participation. And we've also heard engage people at the point when it actually matters and it's real and it's relevant. Maybe I could turn to Jonas in Finland to see if you have any reflection on how that's worked for you. Or to anyone else.
Yes, do you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. And keep in mind, if you're unmuted, we hear you typing.
Yeah, so in terms of when people should be involved, I think that's a crucial question, and where most crowdsourcing exercises run the risk of failing is when you don't talk the same language. I mean, you should know if you're talking about taking involving people in the kind of issue framing early phase, or if you're involving them in the options generation, or if you're involving them in kind of improving, crystallizing the selected options, or if you're actually including them in the decision-making process, or which of these kind of phases in the decision-making process you're involving people, or if you're in fact wanting to involve them in all of these, which kind of sets a lot of requirements for the tools and processes that you have in place to make sure that those kind of feed into the next phase properly. So if you try to kind of put participation on top of an existing process, that's kind of the problem that you usually run into, is that you try to open up one of these phases, but the existing processes don't quite bend into that situation. I don't know if this makes any sense to you. I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
I want to see if there are any other questions in this discussion about engagement and motivation. If you have questions for each other, the questions don't only have to come from me. There's lots of things going on in the chat, so I want to move to close this section by seeing what final questions people have or that have come across the chat or that you want to ask of each other. Please do.
Tarek wants to talk.
Tarek, yes. Can you unmute him? He's muted. He shows me.
Tarek?
Wait, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. You need.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Unmute.
Go ahead now.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to share my thoughts on your earlier question. And I mean, based on our experience, it's a different reflection to think of a crowdsourcing effort that's coming from an NGO or an activist compared to coming from the government. Sometimes, like the campaign itself, its goal is raising awareness and advocacy to open other channels, to go offline, to push for the media. And I mean, the goal itself is just getting people to know about it and then create a new wave if it's coming from an NGO or an activist. While if it's coming from the government, it's very important to have like that feedback loop, etc. The other reflection we had from experience is the appetite of participation changes from countries like that are going through transitional political transition, where there is a very high appetite of participation. They're moving from like a context where there was no participation, and there is a thirst of just being there and being present on the transition, comparing to countries where there are already other channels and there are already like lots of interesting stuff going on, and it's harder to get their attention. And then when we discuss these type of topics, I think it's interesting to separate the difficulties or the challenges of technology and the challenges of the policy making in general. I mean, the technology discussion is about like, hey, should we integrate with social media? Should we integrate with like face-to-face data collection and integrating into some data warehouse? Should we use SMS, radio, etc.? The policy is about like, really, how can we close the feedback loop? And even if we don't, what would that mean? Is raising awareness like a good goal by itself? Like it's sometimes like we get into this discussion of, do we want quantitative participation or meaningful participation? And that's, I think, is an interesting discussion by itself, and it varies from context to another.
I think, Ben, you wanted to dive in with a comment or a question here.
Sure. I think when I spoke, I didn't give enough credit to success. So I'll just speak to one which is less legislative, but still something we did. So we have a bike share program in New York City. It's called City Bike. It's modeled on many of the things most of you have already in your cities. We use a digital app where we did a hard mailing to 60,000 households requesting feedback, and largely what we ended up seeing was a lot of support and people doing it. And one of the key things we kept running into was we would get responses from people saying, well, how do I impact this? And we actually worked with them, and when we were able to get on the phone with them and say, okay, what you should do is send a letter saying, thank you for an opportunity for feedback. This is where a station I don't want. This is where you should put it instead. We ended up getting a lot of responses, and we rolled out 27 stations throughout my district, and all but 2 of them people are happy about. We're not getting complaints. So I think one challenge I'm seeing that I don't quite see in other countries, which is actually great, is anytime we have online or offline engagement, it requires offline actions for results. And I think the reason the City Bike system was a better outcome than usual is because it was a quick feedback loop. We started in February. The stations got rolled out this week or earlier this month. So that's been an example of where people were able to engage the process starting in February until about July, and then they saw the results very quickly, and they were able to engage online via email and in different ways and see the real world results.
Any other? I'm just checking the chat. I want to ask one more while the chat continues on this topic. I want to just ask if anybody wants to share any reflections, further reflections on incentives for institutional engagement. There's been a lot of discussion about how to engage individuals and get people to participate. For those of you who've had to go through the process of convincing a parliament or convincing a lawmaker, convincing a government to do things differently, what has been the most effective set of arguments or what hasn't worked?
They can raise their hand and I can.
And I'll just unmute everybody. Can we do that? Yeah. Just go ahead and unmute all for the moment. We can. It's faster. Sorry, if you can raise your hand, then we can. We have everybody muted for the moment. Okay. Okay, great. Tarek, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I want to share, I shared it on Twitter and I want to share it here as well. I think there is an opportunity for crowd law with the OGP process. When OGP is basically open governments partnership, and the fourth pillar to join this club of governments is citizen participation. And basically, there is a movement today around the world. I think we're getting into, I'm not sure, maybe 90 countries that are joining the movements, where basically they have to adhere and respect those four pillars, and the fourth of them is citizen participation. And there, basically, I think we should push. There are already movements to have this participatory democracy around the world, where there is the right of petition and the right of motion to be respected. I think we need to push and try to structure what it means to have e-participation, what it means to have e-petition, e-motion, and there I think crowd law can be a structural contribution to the whole international movement.
Pierre, we're going to unmute you so you can share, if you don't mind, say out loud what you're talking about in the chat. So to Pierre Tito Gala.
Hi, this is Pierre Tito Gala of democracy.net.ph. And earlier, my colleague Cecile Soria was earlier participating. So, at any rate, Philippines has not enjoyed the successes that a lot of your cities or countries have enjoyed, and some of our challenges I put up on the chat site. So I think the most that I will be able to share now is that here in the Philippines, for an issue to move through Parliament, it has to be something that's closely personal to the legislator. It should not be something that's intellectually interesting. And failing that, it has to be something that he feels or she feels he's on the winning side, that it's a quick win. Because if it's a long slog, if it's a 99-page piece of legislation, there's not going to be much interest. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we can keep this thread of the conversation going while we move on to our next conversation about the design aspects. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap between the questions of incentives and the questions of technical design. But I wanted to start by asking people not only to share your comments and reflections and questions in the sidebar, but we're going to unmute people so that you can talk to us about the tech side of things. So very interested that there are so many different platforms that have been proliferating. and many of you have felt the need to build your own, even though others exist. So I'm curious to get, in as briefly as possible, sort of in bullet format, one feature that you think, what's the key design feature to the tool that you use that makes it work? And what's the one key feature you didn't want to have? What's the one feature that didn't work? So if you could share something about the design that's led you to to roll your own, so to speak. So let me start with Ronaldo and Plataforma Brazil, which is a new platform, and then I also want to move to NEOS to ask you about having built your own. And what, again, key design feature that's crucial from your perspective, and one thing that you didn't want to have, or either or both.
Sure.
And to anyone who wants to join in.
Right. So thank you, Beth. I think one of the key issues for us was the issue of language. So you have to be very careful in what type of language that you're using if you want to have as much participation as you can. Depending on how you structure the terms, the visuals of the website, the icons, you will be attractive for a certain public, but not attractive for another one. So you might be attracting young people, or you might not be attracting young people. So the language issue for us was very important, especially how you put the phrases into Portuguese, how do you provide extra information in a conversational way. So I think the challenge for civic participation is not unlike the challenge of media and like how you restructure newspapers, how you make them relevant for a much broader audience. So I think in terms of design, we have a lot to learn about the experiences on how to expand the outreach of what we do to design, through data visualization, through language, and so on. So this was one of the challenges that we've had. The other thing we've had, Beth, is that it's very hard for people to change their daily habits online. So basically, it's hard to get them to leave, the social networks that they use on a daily basis and to go to a specific platform and to spend and invest their time there. So as much as we could, we basically let people actually do what they do on a daily basis and provide comments or contributions through those platforms that they're used to. And then we take those contributions, consider them as part of the civic engagement initiative. So I think this is another lesson that we've learned. The more you can let people do what they're used to do on a daily basis, and the more you can consider those contributions as well as part of the official contributions of your platform, that is also very helpful. So these are only two insights we've had in Brazil that I wanted to share with you.
So speaking on behalf of NEOS, I think there are two things, two reasons for deciding to go with a customized platform. One is that we haven't yet found a platform that is in German that works in ways we need them. So there, of course, some of them are in English, some of them are in Spanish, but I wouldn't know if there is any platform that really works well in German. And the other thing is that a lot of those platforms have their own processes and phases and way of doing things. And we have a particular process by our statutes, how what the deadlines are, what the phases are, and so we customized this platform basically to our needs, and we haven't found a platform that we could take open source and just customize the way and tailor it the way we would need it. But of course, what we experience on the other hand is that there are issues with the programming. It takes a lot of time. It's not our specialty. So there have been delays and there have been at times where we weren't satisfied. So we're still looking for that tool or platform. And again, if you have any suggestions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Okay. I want to see if anybody else has any key reflections on design. And is anybody now, given the proliferation of platforms, I mean, many of you started this at a point in which there was nothing available. Are there platforms out there that you see now that you think should be melded together? Do you see an evolution? Do you think the field needs to move towards fewer platforms? Are we ready for that yet? Or are we still at the stage where we need a proliferation of many, many more platforms until we settle on some kind of standard later? I'm wondering, Victoria, if you want to dive in. Victoria, you're unmuted.
Hi, sorry, Beth.
Sorry, the question,
I don't listen you. The micro thing.
Yeah, but Maria's a dictator with the microphone here. She keeps cutting me off. The question to you was, now that you have adopted many existing tools and built some of your own. So
Yes.
a question to you about how you see the evolution. Do we need many new platforms and to try them and to see what works before we converge around a standard? Or are we ready to start converging? Do we buy, build? What do you think is key here?
Podemos takes very seriously the technological tools. So they have 15 guys working on that. 15 IT guys that are reviewing the tools that exist in the market. And normally its policy is just to take an existing one, like for example, Reddit or Agora voting, and adapt them. One of the reasons that they really select open source tools are because they want to adapt them. So the first tool that they are really trying to build from zero is the one that I wrote you in the chat. That is for the legislative process. During all this time, they were adapting the tools that they already exist in the market, but open source always. The only one that it was an open source, it was AppGrid, and they selected it because it was really good, and it was the only option that they have found to do these massive questions. But now they are trying to change it and to use Lumit for the same or almost the same because it's open source. So I think the policy that they follow is use open source and adapt these tools to their needs mainly.
I think Cristiano wanted to dive in with a question.
Yes. It's a very important question, Beth. I believe that we need to move forward for our next stage because at least what I'm seeing so far, we are kind of, I would say in quote, that we are playing participation. And it's very important that everyone, citizens, politicians, and the bureaucracy start to get used with these participatory tools, this possibility to suggest and comment and to create drafts for a policy, for example. And we are doing this. I think the mankind has done it the last years, and we need this slow pace for all the system to get used to it. But I believe it's time to finish this kind of participatory childhood, I would say, because it's wonderful. For one side, we have such diverse platforms, participatory platforms with different designs and different perspectives. It's great for one hand. On other hand, it's very costly for politicians, even for the state, the bureaucracy, to manage this, to understand, to map it out. So it's a paradox, because it's good, it's useful to have this diffuse ecosystem, participatory ecosystem, but we need to focus now. We need to concentrate more, because otherwise this diffusion will become a confusion. And for that reason, I believe we need to collaborate more between us. We need to co-create tools. We need to put all these wonderful people inside and outside the government to co-create tools that can be more meaningful and can be maybe easier to engage more people and politicians in this process.
Thank you. Do we have any hands raised or final reflections on the design front? Otherwise, we can keep that discussion going in the chat, and I'd like to focus for the last few minutes on, I wish we had more time, to focus on the most important question, which is impact. Is there a group out there that focuses on impact based on inputs, and a group out there that's focusing on impact based on outputs? In other words, is someone out there thinking about impact in terms of the quality of the resulting legislation or the legitimacy of the resulting legislation, versus someone who's measuring based on the number or quality or diversity of participation in the process? Can we who is there someone focused on the output side who can, if you can physically raise your hand, then we can see you, or virtually raise your hand, and then we can hopefully hear from you. Lex, who's in France. Can we unmute Lex? Lex Paulson, who's either in Prague or in Paris, or either way, we're jealous.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'll give you an example of an output that we focused on in a pilot in the Czech Republic, where we crowdsourced the question of what to do with a public square, and the question involved 16 different proposals from architecture firms that then the members of the city, the citizens of the city could vote on. And in this case, something that was crucial was not only the diversity and the number of participants, but also the level of consensus behind the final architectural plan that was chosen. And in this case, it was really critical to balance the views of people who traveled on foot to work versus cars versus bikes. And so our platform measured the relative consensus of different choices among different people who took different modes of transportation. And so in that sense, the way we quantified the output was the percentage of each of those categories of commuters who were happy with the proposed plan for the town square. And so it was a way of measuring it with some detail.
Oh no, let's go right to Ben and to Pierre.
In my district, we do participatory budgeting, and as a result, people actually get a much shortened feedback loop. They're able to vote on legislation, which is our city budget, and what they've been able to get is, in our first vote, bus countdown clocks, which are already getting installed, and actually I'm going to be trying to set up when we're going to do the big unveiling, but people are now able to see where their bus is. But in terms of outputs, I would say a lot of what we're doing online, and what I'm trying to do, is connecting with experts like Beth Novick or others, where we're working on legislation, whether it's putting our legislation online or putting our law online. And a lot of the interaction we've had is getting the information out there online, making sure that it gets caught by search engine optimization and Google, so that when somebody's looking at crowd law, they can see that I've got something, and then all of a sudden I get an expert like perhaps Richard Stallman or others who can come in and say, hey, you're using the wrong version of the GNU, of the free software definition, that I was using 0.22 instead of 0.24, and that we needed to update the legislation. So I'm pretty focused on making sure that the legislation I have is the best model there is, and with regards to that, making sure that the legislation we have gets noticed by the people who are the biggest experts and can improve the legislation in the best way possible.
Pierre?
As I mentioned earlier on the chat, three things actually that are making a challenge in the Philippines. First is getting people to be engaged. It's a continuing challenge. A lot of online engagement has to be partnered with, has to be secondary to actual engagement in real life, and it has to be close personal relationships. Secondly, we have to, going back to the point where legislators have to find the issue to be personal. Third is because ICT is information communications technology in the Philippines is very poor, as actually you've seen. Our internet connections are really bad. We only have 37 approximately % of our population online. So that being said, we have to focus in the Philippines. We have to focus on outputs. So initially, our group proposed the Magna Carta for Philippine Internet Freedom, and while it has been heard in both committees of the House and the Senate, it doesn't move so much. So we really have to push little bits of it, like the push for the Department of Information and Communications Technology, little bits like that. So that's why in the Philippines, we have to measure by outputs. And in the future, hopefully, if we finally break maybe 50%, 60% of our people to be online, that's when we can start measuring inputs and participation.
Great. So we are at the end of our hour, so I want to do a thing with 1 more minute. First is to ask everybody who's online, whether you spoke or not, to turn on your video. A quick picture of everybody who was here. Second is to include final comments in the chat, and then I want to ask the speakers for 1 line and no more than 1 line. One thing, if you can do 1 thing that you hope for when we look back, when we have this conversation a year from now, what is the 1 thing that you hope will be different? 1 reflection. So let me go down the list, and I'll start with Victoria. 1 line. You're unmuted. All speakers are unmuted. Victoria?
Okay, I think that the most useful thing from the session today is to really see that a lot of people have the same problems and are trying to find solutions to really do a successful crawl.
Joseph?
We share a lot of common problems and challenges.
Joseph, over to you. 1 thing that will be different. Will you still be doing this in a year?
I think what would be wonderful if it would be different to have a network of practitioners to be able to approach and to ask questions. You know, how did you solve this or that, or how do you deal with this or that? So that this becomes kind of a regular thing.
Great.
Yeah, if I can jump in very quickly. 1 thing that I hope that is different in 1 year is mobile plus certification of identity. You know, that we can participate and create legal initiatives and valid legal acts of participation throughout our cell phones. That's what I really hope happens in 1 year from now.
Jonas?
Yeah, I think, I hope within a year we will start seeing the beginning, at least, of some kind of convergence, interoperability between all these different platforms, some kind of federated structure emerging. That's something we have been investigating in the Decent project. I'll post a link to that also, you can have a look. But I think that's what we need at some point. But as you mentioned, we're still probably in the age of proliferation of all different services. So let's see if we're starting to be there in a year or not.
Sean? Sean may have trouble hearing us. How about Tarek?
1 year is too short, but like it would be really great in 1 year to have an end-to-end solution that deals with access to law, civic education, as well as participation.
Ben or Sean?
I'm going to plus one on Junas's comment, which is I just want an open API and an open schema for commenting on law, legislation, regulation, so that there's no more data silos. Whatever app you're using, all of the conversations should be able to happen together, app neutral, so that we don't lose the great, valuable feedback people are giving.
John?
Hey, Beth, yeah, very useful to hear what everybody's doing and to hear that there are so many initiatives underway, and it does give a little bit of confidence or faith, at least, that we may be moving towards some sort of a solution for everybody. I think what I would really like to see from a constitution-making perspective a year from now would be some sort of a recognition, general acceptance that online digital participation should be standard. If you have a percentage, 15, 20% of the population do have access to the internet, then there should be a standard that you have an e-participation platform in a constitution-making process. I mean, from my perspective, that would be a really big step forward.
Daniela?
Hi, so maybe in a year from now, or hopefully maybe a bit more time, but what I'd like to see is that it becomes a bit more of common sense that anyone can participate in the lawmaking process, in legislation processes, that it's not just for specialists or just for legislators in Congress, it's for everyone, and there are the tools necessary to participate, so it becomes a bit more of a common sense that anyone can become an active part of these processes.
Awesome. And Cristiano, I think we didn't hear from you in the last one.
Yes, I would follow Joseph. I think we need a space to keep sharing, keep talking, and keep collaborating as a way to speed up our evolution or evolution of our participatory platforms. Thank you again. It was a great opportunity.
Thank you to everybody. Did I miss anybody in the last? I think we got everybody. If we didn't, please wave your hands wildly for the last word. Otherwise, I want to thank the GovLab team here, Maria especially, for doing a fabulous job at putting this together. And also Julia in the background, and Irena, who's here, who'll be working on writing up what we learned today. We're going to follow up with blog posts. We're going to follow up, if people would like, Slack. You can let us know if you prefer Discourse, Slack, something else. What are our other choices for continuing the conversation informally offline? And we're going to be trying to draw this together into some reflections from you that we'll share and have ready in time for the Open Government Partnership Summit in Mexico in October, and also available online. So till we see you next year, please stay in touch. We will share a Twitter list of crowd law practitioners. We will share contact list for everybody online. We will share the recording and the transcript for this, and we will overshare. And so, and if you could, please wave, because Maria is taking pictures. So wave, everybody. Say crowd law. Thank you. Bye.